Thank you so much for joining my live today. I believe that I am on live on LinkedIn in the first instance, and also YouTube, and also Facebook. And so if you are joining this live, please let me know in the chat function. It'd be wonderful to know who is joining today's call and where you are joining from, both the platform that you're joining from and indeed where in the world. So I'm using a new platform today. It's called Restream, and the platform is designed to help us to be able to broadcast on a number of different channels simultaneously. So I'm trialing this today in the hope that it actually is able to broadcast on all of those platforms, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Facebook. So if you are joining me live, it's wonderful to have you. Please let me know that you're joining in the chat. It's great to have you. And if you are watching the replay, again, wherever you're watching this replay, please let me know in the chat. Just by marking it with replay would be amazing. So thank you so much for joining. So then, the conversation today that I posted certainly on LinkedIn and shared, that what I'm going to be sharing on today's live is focusing on why we need to become better advocates for our work, or to become the advocates that our work deserves. And just by way of introduction, my name is Sharon Amesu, and I am the founder of the Modern Advocate. I'm a leadership communication specialist, and I take lessons from the boardroom to help senior leaders, from the courtroom to help senior leaders in the boardroom to have greater influence and impact. And I, in particular, a lot of my work is around board advisory, but also I work extensively with women who are in mid to senior leadership, who are wanting to advance and accelerate their career. And this particular broadcast today is focused on women in leadership, and women who are high achieving, they are ambitious, they're highly accomplished already, and they've already achieved incredible results in their careers, and yet still they feel that they are capable of so much more, and yet they are not accelerating in the way in which they wish to. And what I have come to recognize is the following. First of all, that issues of confidence exist everywhere, irrespective of levels of seniority. Issues of imposter syndrome exist everywhere, irrespective of levels of seniority. And at its heart, what I have come to understand is this, that in my own work and personally, when I tap into something which transcends imposter syndrome and transcends even confidence, that I'm much better able and much better placed to be able to advance and accelerate my career. And I believe through my own work, it is linked to and founded in this idea of advocacy. There may well be no surprises there. I'll tell you why. Because for 16 years, I was a criminal barrister. Ceased practice around about 12 years ago, and I now provide executive coaching and consulting services. But in those 16 years at the bar, I want to share with you something that became hugely significant in my own understanding of how we speak up for others and the impact that it makes when we have the mindset of an advocate. Because I remember when I was going into court, I was a criminal practitioner, and that would mean that I would go into the robing room. And in the robing room, that is the place where you place on your robe and you place on your wig. And that was almost the point at which you would take on the identity of the advocate, knowing that you are going into the courtroom to represent the interests of your client. And I don't recall at any time at all, whilst in practice, entering into the courtroom, asking myself the question, how confident am I? Or how courageous am I? What I was preoccupied with in that moment as I went into the courtroom and as I saw my client and as I saw the jury before me and the tribunal in front of me, what I recall being my number one focus was, how do I ensure that I represent the interests of my client in the most compelling way? How do I ensure that the people who are going to be making decisions about my client's future understand this case? How do I ensure that they are supportive of my argument? How do I ensure that I make the case well on their behalf? That was my preoccupation. And that was based on this understanding of who I was and how I was showing up in those rooms. And so, what I have then come to fully understand and appreciate even more is that when we tap into an identity, it's almost as though the confidence, the courage, and all that is necessary for us to perform well in that moment, whether it be in the boardroom, whether it be in a negotiation, whether it be asking for a promotion or having a difficult conversation or whatever it might be, when it comes to having to do that, then we do that so much better when we come from this place of understanding who we are as an individual in that moment. And in this context, the advocate. Because when I was operating as an advocate, when I was wearing the robe, when I took on that persona of being the person who's speaking on behalf of, it has a completely different thrust. It carries a completely different weight. We have a completely different positioning, a mindset shift when we are actually focusing on what we are doing and who we are doing it for. And what I have come to realize is this, that the same skills of advocacy in the courtroom, of speaking up, of understanding that the words that I speak, that the goals that I have, the determination that I have, all of that, when I focus in on that, that helps me to be more effective and achieve the results that I want to achieve. When I began to understand that this is not just something that holds weight in the courtroom, but these are skills that transcend into the boardroom, and indeed even into every other room that we might occupy. When we take on the role of being the advocate, then it mitigates all of the stuff that is associated with lack of confidence and imposter syndrome and the like. And so my invitation to you who are watching live and those who are watching on the replay, it's this. It is to engage and embrace the mindset of the advocate. And in turn, as you do so, as you understand and as you connect with the fact that if you don't advocate for your career, if you don't advocate for your promotion, if you don't advocate for that acceleration, no one is going to do that for you. No one is going to save you. Now, let me say this in parenthesis, if I may. I, throughout my entire career, have had incredible mentors and incredible sponsors. Sponsors in particular, those people who, when I was not in the room, mentioned my name. When I was not in the room, elevated my profile, spoke of what I was able to accomplish and contribute at that table. I've had so many of those people, and for them I am grateful. But ultimately, the responsibility for me progressing in my career and advocating for my career is entirely my own. It is entirely my responsibility. And for all of the great work that the incredible women who come across my path have done, the ability to be able to advocate for your career, to speak up for your career, to speak up for what you've accomplished, to position yourself in a way that says, I am eligible for the next piece of work, the next project. I am willing to make myself visible. I am willing to speak up. On behalf of my organization, I'm willing to go onto the panel. I'm willing to do the speaking engagement. The ability to do that, the willingness to do that rests on us. And so what I want to encourage everyone who is watching today, whether you're watching live, thank you so much, or you are watching the replay, it's this. It's to understand that we need to be the best advocates for our careers and our work. And what I see is that we are all very capable of doing this. We advocate every single day. And in fact, one of the sort of strap lines that I've landed on in this work is that every single day we are making a case. Every day we are making a case to our colleagues, we are making a case to our management team, we are making a case to our senior leadership team, we are making a case at board level. We are making a case every single day. The question is whether we are consciously making that case by design or by default. Are we curating our case? Are we mindful of a structure around how we're making that case? Are we mindful of the audience who are going to be hearing what we're saying? And are we curating it in a way that will make it compelling for those who are on the other end of our advocacy? We are making a case. So how do we do that better? Well, let's start with why it's necessary in the first instance. And if this is resonating with you, please let me know in the chat. So one of the key things that I want to just draw our attention to, and it will come as no surprise to anyone who's watching this live today, and that is that there is huge disruption which is taking place in the marketplace right now. And that's undeniable by anyone who has any sense of the world of tech and AI disruption, or just literally looking at your own workplace and just looking within your own teams and the conversations that are taking place. I think it's quite interesting, don't you, that even here in the UK, in our newly appointed cabinet, we have a specific minister who's focused on AI in particular and the wider AI adoption conversation and responsible AI and so on. So the conversation around artificial intelligence, how it's impacting the wider world, but also in this context, in the workplace, is something that we cannot ignore. We most definitely have to pay attention to it. And we have to pay attention to it is because it is impacting our workplaces and it will continue to do so. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what might this disruption continue to look like? And also, how might it impact my workplace? And more specifically, how might it impact my work? Because the truth is, it will. According to the World Economic Forum, it's expected that by 2030, so that's literally just 4 years from now, circa 92 million jobs are predicted to be lost. 92 million jobs. And that is causing already some real consternation and anxiety and concern within workplaces among many leaders. Every leader that I've been speaking to recently about what is happening in their workplace as it relates to change and transformation and AI disruption and adoption. That same issue is surfacing, and that is that colleagues are conscious and worried and anxious about what this means for them. And so understanding that there is already sitting within our organizations a drumbeat, as it were, this sense that things are changing. What does it mean for me? Am I going to lose my job? That's already a conversation that is happening, whether it is being vocalized extensively, broadly, loudly, or it's sitting beneath the surface. Rest assured that it's there. And one can understand why that's the case, because there's lots of noise, isn't there, right now in the ether around what AI is going to mean for us, how AI is going to impact us, and how it's going to wipe out all of the jobs that there are it feels in many quarters quite fatalistic and deterministic. I don't personally believe that it ought to be regarded in that way, especially as converse to that first piece of data that I shared with you, that 92 million jobs are predicted to be lost by 2030, 4 years from now. It's also predicted that there will be circa 170 plus million jobs that will come into the marketplace. So there will be new jobs, and those new jobs will require what? They will require new skills. That will require us to reskill and upskill. They'll require us to learn new skills. They'll require us to have a completely different mindset, because the truth is, some of the jobs that exist now will not exist in 2030, but there will be jobs that don't currently exist that will exist then. And so the person who becomes an advocate for their career understands the need for them to speak up and be mindful and be strategic about where they want to position themselves and how they advocate for developing those skills right now in their workplace from where they are. Because those opportunities that will come online, and I believe certainly that with the right regulation, with the right guidance, with key policy making that is mindful of securing people's futures and isn't just focused on the profitability and the productivity behind all of this new tech. I believe that that has to be very much centered in how AI is adopted and rolled out and progressed and accelerated. Being mindful of that agenda, if all of those guardrails are in situ, then there will be a whole host of opportunities that come on the market, as I say, but it's how will those opportunities be distributed? And to hold an assumption that they'll just be evenly distributed to anyone and everyone, irrespective of your advocacy for yourself, is to fall into a complacency which could be damaging for your career. Because as with any opportunity, it is those who position themselves for those opportunities. It's those who are mindful and strategic about going in pursuit of those skills. It's about those who are seeing what is emerging, what is surfacing in the landscape. And they ask themselves, well, what are the skills that I need to be able to capitalize on those opportunities? And who do I need to ask for insight to gain access to those doors? What are the trainings that might be coming online? Who do I ask? Do I go to my manager to ask for that support to go on that training? It's those people. It's the people who will be advocates for themselves, who will be able to access and leverage those opportunities. Because I come back to my original point whilst I take a sip of coffee. Decaf. That it's those who advocate for themselves who most definitely will continue to progress in the marketplace. So what, and I don't know if this is something that you have seen yourself. I most definitely have seen this over my years in practice as a barrister and my years in practice as an executive coach. That it's not always the people who are the most brilliant. It is not always the people who are the most talented who get the opportunities. And that's a really unfortunate truism. That it's not always the people who are the most capable who get the promotion. How many of us have been in a situation, now if you resonate with this, please let me know. How many of us have been in a situation where we have been skilled and capable and competent and well able to deliver, but someone who has been significantly, notably less capable of doing so has been promoted above us? How many of us resonate with that as a situation, as a scenario? I've come across this description of a situation, workplace situation, repeatedly, on repeat, where in fact, what happens is that the person who has been appointed and promoted above you, you are then called upon to train that person, to provide them with guidance about how they should deliver on a job or on a project or in a role or on a program that actually you should have been leading on because you were the most capable. And yet, the promotion eluded you. Why? Why is that the case? Because so often it's because that person was much more adept, capable of advocating for themselves, of positioning themselves, of identifying who the key stakeholders were to help them to get to that next level. They were much more equipped, much better equipped at setting out what their accomplishments were and indeed linking those accomplishments to business objectives and business imperatives. They were much better able. I've seen it in my own career. In my own career, I've seen people who were not particularly talented, but they talented as in delivery of a project or program, but my goodness, they had striking interpersonal skills. For example, they knew who the movers and shakers were. They knew how to have the necessary conversations with the right people. Their stakeholder mapping and their stakeholder management was second to none. Their ability to advocate for themselves with stealth and sharpness of tongue was such that they were availed opportunities that many others were not. And so I want to encourage each and every one of you who's watching this live or watching the replay to appreciate that in order for you to, one, progress in your career, but in any event to navigate the new world of work which is upon us all, and one for which, whilst I understand the fear that may be attendant with that for many people and occupying many minds, I want to encourage us not to be fearful of change, but to be embracing of it, but the way in which we've become embracing of it and we confidently go forward into it and we see it as a way of us expanding and growing, etc., is to adopt the mindset of the person who is able to advocate through, who is able to speak up on our own behalf, knowing that we are capable of doing so because we do it all the time. We do it for our teams, don't we? We do it for the budgets in our teams. I was speaking recently to one leader in an organization where there had been a depletion of budgets in that particular team, and so that person had to become really the advocate for the team to say, recognize what we are achieving here and allocate appropriate budgeting, appropriate budgets, right? So the understanding that she was an advocate for her team. We can be advocates, even if you think of parents, for example. How many of us as parents are advocates for our own children? We can speak up on their behalf if we sense that there is an injustice, if we sense that there is an opportunity that they should be available but then not be, then we speak up. And so too, we have this sense, don't we? We have this sense of what it is to be able to speak up for others. But what say us about ourselves? What say us about our own prospects? Why do we shy away? And one of the reasons, it seems to me, is because there is so much associated, there's so many negative connotations associated with being visible and advocating and asking on our own behalf. It's fine for us to do that for other people, but when it comes to us, we shy away from that. We almost recuse ourselves of responsibility in that regard. We're reticent, reluctant even, to our own demise at times. And so us being advocates for ourselves is so important. And I want to share with you a framework to help you to think about how you can best position yourself and prepare yourself to advance your own case for yourself. And I use this proprietary framework called CASE. First of all, it's really important, starting with C in this acronym, because everyone needs a good acronym for a framework, don't we? First of all, there is CASE. All right. So clarify your case. When I was instructed to represent a client, or even now when I'm coaching clients, it's really important for me to understand the brief, as it were. What is the actual objective here? What are we talking about? What are the issues here? What are the concerns here? What is this case all about? So being really clear, clarifying your case, what is it that you actually want? In those timeless words of the sages of the ages, the Spice Girls. Tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. Getting clear on what you want in your career, getting clear on the value that you bring, getting clear on the contributions that you have made, getting clear on the results that you have accomplished, and doing so and quantifying it where possible. So there is, of course, the qualitative measures, and then there are the quantifiable measures. What can you articulate and clarify that? What do you want and what do you bring? Clarity. The second, and this is something that I most definitely learned, and in future lives I'll share more about this, is understanding alignment. Alignment with your audience. When I was in practice, most definitely I understood the need for me to be mindful of whether it was the jury, mindful of the jury, and the concerns that might be operating in their minds as I was speaking to them about my client's case, or if I was prosecuting, thinking about the concerns, what might be operating in their minds, and adapting appropriately to speak to their needs. So thinking about the audience in front of you, the person who's making the key decision about your promotion, in that negotiation, in the boardroom, who you're seeking to persuade, that key stakeholder, what is operating on their mind? What is the concern? What are the objectives that they are holding that you need to speak to as you are making your case? What are the ambitions and goals that they have? And how can you align to that as you are wanting to advocate on your own behalf? And so thinking about alignment, what matters to them? What pressures are they facing? What concerns do they have? And how can you ensure that what you are advocating in relation to it, in what you bring, speaks to that? The second, that was A in this acronym. The second is supporting evidence. Whenever I'm working with clients and I talk to them about accelerating their careers, one of the things that I'm really mindful of is that there is a huge difference between emotion and evidence. And there is little benefit, one could argue, between you simply espousing your frustration with not being recognized, not being celebrated, not being acknowledged, not being progressed, and you expressing that frustration, which of course is understandable. All of that is understandable. But if it's only bearing fruit of emotion, and it's not supported, buttressed, girded by strong foundations of evidence, then you're going on a very short walk. Because if there is no evidence, and I've spoken certainly on my Instagram, please feel free to check out my profile. I've talked about the Aristotelian principles of persuasion. And Aristotle, he was a Greek philosopher who lived around about 2,400 years ago or so in northern Greece, and he set up a school that would help people to be more persuasive. And essentially, he would say this, that there are three principles for persuading others. He called it the means of persuasion, the proofs, he called them. And one of those was logos, all right? Logos. And that was about logic. Essentially, it's the evidence. It's the evidence that underpins what you are saying. The other two are pathos and ethos for another conversation. But essentially, logos. Where is the evidence for what you have done? What are the results? Bring the receipts, for want of a better expression. Where are the receipts? What is the difference that you have made? How have you increased productivity? How have you driven performance? What influence, what impact has it made? What positive feedback has come back as a result of what you have accomplished and what you did? Being able to articulate that clearly, support your case is important. And then finally, and drawing that together, and then finally execution. So that's the E, if you've been following along. So it's clarify, align, support with evidence, and then execute. Book the meeting, have the conversation, put yourself forward. If you see an opportunity there across every industry now, across every sector, there are events, there are conferences, there are panels, there are speaking opportunities, there are meetings, team meetings within your own organization, where there will be opportunity for you to bring a new idea and share that idea. Execute, go forward, ask the question, initiate, make the clear request, and follow up. And even after, even if, even when, and this, may I say, is often inevitable, and this goes to a conversation around resilience for another time, even when you face a no, or there is silence, there is rejection. Our ego, of course, is resistant to that. And our defense mechanisms most definitely are raised and heightened, and they want to protect us and say, don't go there again because you've been rejected. And it speaks then to this idea of our self-worth, and all of that stuff surfaces, doesn't it? When we're feeling that we have not been accepted, or our proposal has been rejected, and so on, whatever it might be, it is at that crux point that we then really have to enter in, embed ourselves in the mindset of the advocate, because it most definitely could not be the case that if I, during the course of a trial, face rejection by a judge on a particular decision, that I said, well, that's it, it's hopeless now. It's just no point. There's no point doing this. It is entirely futile. Not at all. I have to go back again. We'd have to pursue again, wouldn't we? And so even when you do face those rejections, those knockbacks, remember, you are the advocate for your career. You have the responsibility to advance your career. And in these very changing, disrupted times of uncertainty, times of change and unpredictability, if there is anyone who needs to hold the court and hold the fort for our careers, it is us. And so I want to encourage you to remember that you are the advocate, and you have to be the advocate that your work deserves. If you would like any support with that, if you would like any support with helping you to think about how do you position yourself to be a more effective advocate for your own career, how do you present your case and make your case in a compelling way, then please feel free to contact me, DM me. It'll be great to hear more from you. But for now, thank you so much for either tuning in live to this live or watching the replay. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.